Da, 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 da. Good morning, everybody. This is Grant, and today I've got insight for you on why Confucius is just wrong. We're going to cover that. But before we cover anything, we've got other news this morning, and we also got morning cup of gratitude. Let me tell you something what I'm grateful for this morning. Rest days. My workouts have been so hardcore. They've been so difficult to keep up with. I'm telling you, we're doing two-a-days. I'm eating so much, and yesterday I got sick of eating. It was just too much. So today I'm taking a rest day, stretching my lower back, and fasting a little bit this morning so that just giving my whole system a rest. So that's what I'm grateful for this morning. What are you grateful for? What are you absolutely most grateful for that's waking you up, that's getting you going this morning? I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you're grateful for. That's what I'm grateful for. Let's talk about other news. I only got one piece of other news for you this morning. And I was going through the news and I thought there's not much that's newsworthy. And then I realized, hang on. The inspiration for travelers are traveling to space as early as 8 p.m. tonight from Kennedy Space Center. Yes! I don't know if you've been paying attention like I have. It's been almost a year since they announced that they were going to do a contest and send 4 civilians. No NASA, no military, just scientists, business owners, good people going to space. And this trip is a little bit different. So they're taking off from Kennedy Space Center. And they said that they've got a little bit of just what amounts to normal jitters, but they're ready to go. In fact, Sheehan Proctor, age 51 and a geoscience professor, said, I was just worried, not about this flight, but that this moment would never come in my life. So let's get going and let's do this. I love this for the symbolism of sending civilians to space. So about 8 p.m. tonight, we're going to start watching. I've got several links for you on this, actually. Number one link, boom, boom. That link is a little bit about the article about them getting ready for today's flight, launching out of Kennedy Space Center. If I was really tracking this and paying attention, I probably would have thought about going and staying in our place in Cocoa to watch this launch. And then the actual homepage website of the inspiration for crew. The trip itself has its own website, so check that out. And I give those to you because you can watch it live with you. If you're in Florida here, you can look outside and watch Inspiration take off. And we're talking about taking off. We're talking about going off today in today's brief lesson. But you can watch it there. You can watch it live. See the comments down below. And listen, that's my only piece of other news this morning because there's not much else I want to talk about today other than you taking off. Other than you taking off, and I want to talk to you about it because I'm actually talking to me about taking off. I want to read something to you very quickly because I find that there's a problem that I'm noticing either as people get older or as society gets wonky. I'm noticing that people are becoming more and more reserved. Now, we see this in several ways. For extroverts who are getting reserved, they're going into extremes, extreme politics, extreme religions, extreme temperaments. They just go into their corner and they get ready for a fight. Now, on the other hand, if people are introverted and they get more and more reserved, they're withdrawing in general from participating in the richness of just being involved with society. Now, I was thinking about this because a lot of times introverts or reserved people get a bad rap. They get crapped on a lot, and they have a lot growing up in the 90s when being loud and obnoxious and charismatic was the way to go. In fact, there's from Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey actually talks about charisma-based ethics versus character-based ethics. In fact, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right here. The whole intro in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is about the difference between charisma-based ethics versus character-based ethics. And it's not just someone being loud and boisterous. Sometimes it's someone just being confident. We start to follow people in their principles based on charisma, personality, cults of personality. But we saw a turn at about the internet era, give or take, mid-90s and on, when this became the thing. Now, long before this, like As long as I can remember, even being in grade school, they had a thing called character counts in grade school. I don't know if you remember this. Raise your hand and let me know in the comments if you remember character counts. And counts was literally about that. It was about celebrating when people acted with a high moral character. Now, character morality is subjective. I don't disagree with that. And it changes with time. But character traits in general, positive character traits, discipline, focus, caring, kindness. These are character traits, not personality traits. And quite often when we talk about them and we say, hey, that was really kind of you, we talk about it like it was a temperament trait, like, oh, she's a kind person. These are not character traits. These are not personality traits. They're character. They're core character. They're not personality. They're not fleeting. They're not charisma driven. They're character driven. It's not even just deeply ingrained. It can be chosen at any time. We can choose to act with high character. And that's why in grade school, they used to celebrate character counts. Now they dropped that program and they focused on academic education. And then I would actually go back to like the 80s and 90s when you had this Gordon Gekko sort of character. And then you had these larger than life characters and religious leaders. And now we've got presidents, both Obama and Trump in their own regards have been largely or start out largely charisma-based leaders. And over time, we start to see, do they also have character? So we don't often talk about juxtaposing character and charisma, but we should. And I was pondering how that's just like one reference point. And another reference point, I was pondering how I noticed in society there seems to be a lot of steam lost. People aren't chasing hard after their dreams. They are accepting a lot of the humdrum. And even in doing the humdrum, they shift gears. If someone wakes up with a dream, me and Marissa, she wants to hike more, I want to surf more, we want to travel, we want to invest, and we can talk about all this. And it creates this energy and this excitement. And that energy and this excitement can offer huge amounts of benefits, higher creative problem solving, deeper relationship and rapport. And that's not just for the goals. Goals are a tool. Like a caffeine pill, goals can actually rev your entire body up so that you're more creative, you're more relational, you are ready to rock at a whole new level. But we often think that that energy is only around goals. And so we start to fool ourselves that I can never be this way unless I'm doing the thing that is my goals. If it's surfing in foreign waters at perfect breaks, it's one of my lifelong goals. In my dream machine, I could read it to you. I surf in foreign water at perfect breaks every year. Surf spots around the world. It's just something I want to do. And if I think about that and it gets me jazzed and pumped, I want to talk to everyone about it. I want to get excited about it. I want to and that builds relationship because I'm talking to people about it. And they say, what's Grant all about? Oh, man, he's about the surfing thing right now. He's about these goals he's got. And look at his energy level. He's just pumped. And we think this about goals and we pump ourselves up for goals. But that wasn't the end goal of goals. Goals were meant to take that attitude and that energy and that character and then transmuting that onto the mundane. We're supposed to do the mundane with the same fervor that we chase our goals. But what happens when reserved tendencies and letdown and heartbreak and the weight of the world start to infringe on mundane work? Some people I've noticed can pump themselves up for their goals, but as soon as they step into the mundane, they downshift. Their creativity goes down, their relationship and rapport goes down, their stress goes up. The purpose of building a life where you can jazz yourself up for your goals, the purpose of that was to transfer that to the other areas of your life that you're kind of chained to. We're chained to making a living. We're chained to having to earn an income. We have to do that. So oftentimes we talk about goals and people are like, I don't even want to talk about it. Why? Because I can't chase that. So they'd rather downshift. They're downshifting in the mundane. And then they're also negating the power that goals have to upshift everything. Why would someone want to upshift? Why would someone want to take the positive vibes you get from goal setting and transmit that to the mundane? Because you'll accomplish your work faster. You'll get it off of your table quicker. You'll think of better solutions. You will actually start to like that thing. The fear is, if I start to like this, I'm going to get stuck in it. And that's a misperception. If you downshift in the mundane, you will be wading through mud. And the breakthroughs you need to create the money, to create the clarity, to create the relationship, to attract your goals to you, and all the little elements that have to go on to make a goal happen. If you act like a stick in the mud because you're just like, well, no, if I act excited about this, I'm going to be stuck with this thing. So there's just been this, I've seen this tendency that there's this energy drain from both the mundane and big goals. And then you look around and think, what am I hype about? What am I pumped about? Nothing. You're not hyped and you're not pumped about nothing. Because you have practiced draining and removing energy from the things that get you going. Because you don't want that disappointment, you don't want the struggle, and so you just don't want this cognitive dissonance. So you make sure that you feel about your goals the way you feel about the mundane, because you're rehearsed in survival in the mundane. Now, again, because of this dynamic, I opened with this. Because of this dynamic, you see a lot of introverted people who are often associated with this, and it's not necessarily the case, or reserved people get crapped on a lot because of some of these tendencies, because they're not hype. But meanwhile, they're internally trying to seek integration. They're trying to seek character, not just charisma. So how do we reconcile this? How do we reconcile what appears to be this conflict between the charisma and hype that seems to be sometimes flimsy around goals? Sometimes it seems to be a flimsy amount of character and buzz around goals. And then you get into the mundane and either they don't deliver or you have to start slogging through some work. Remember, the goal of goals was so that energy transmits to the mundane, so that you get through that mundane and graduate from that mundane, so that you can then create the breakthroughs necessary to have your goals, to buy your goals, to visit your goals, to become part of your goals. So if you can't get rid of the responsibilities, the goal is to derive the energy from what you get hyped about in your goals and transmit that to your goals. But then there's this conflict that if we get too hyped and we get disappointed, and we also start judging charisma and think, well, they just have no character. They're always rah, 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 but they don't have it in the tank for the details or following through or whatever this negative trait is. A lot of that seems to be in conflict. So what does Confucius say about it? And this is a big problem. As a coach, I start to talk to people, and the more people I've talked to a few people in the last few weeks, and these people used to be really hype about their goals. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm about it. Well, what do you got to do? Well, I got to knock out my responsibilities. I got to achieve this. I got to take care of these responsibilities. I got to put this much money away. They're actually saving and prepping. But recently, I've started to hear back from these people, and what are your goals? Well, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. And then what about work? Well, I hired one person, but I'm just figuring it out. What does Confucius say? Confucius said, the ancients spoke little. They were too ashamed when their actions fell short of their words. The ancients spoke little. They were too ashamed when their actions fell short of their words. Now, this very quickly reminded me of under promise and over deliver. That's something we say a lot, under promise and over deliver. And to a lot of reserved people's credit, to a lot of introverted or introspective people's credit, they're often trying to make sure that their actions do not fall short of their words. So we would think that Confucius is saying, hey, you know what? It's better to say less, just in case the shame of falling short of your words is too big. I hear that. That's super cute. But what else does he say? Just below that, he says, let me tell you, the noble-minded aspire to be slow to speak. Grant, we just said that. Check me out. He ends this thought by actually saying, but quick to act. Quick to act. Quite often there's a false correlation between being introverted and reserved and making sure that you don't fall short of the words you're promising, and acting slow as well. So there's a false correlation between being introverted and extroverted and being insightful and thoughtful or not. We think that it is not only wise to speak little, but also to act slow. I think Bob Proctor says, Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich says, a leader is quick to make decisions and rarely, if ever, changes their mind. Now that sounds like ignorance, but it's not. Like, what if someone just blindly run in the wrong direction? There's wisdom in what Napoleon Hill said and what Confucius are saying. What they're both saying, there's wisdom there. And here's the wisdom. There is no right path. You could make any path work as long as you did it in a determined way. There's so little right ways to do things. Now, we could go into the realm of science, and I mean relatively. Like, there's a billion things called things. And you could say that, well, Grant, I found 50 million things that there is a right way to do them. But we're talking about success and goals in life and happiness. There is no right way for that. There's your way. There's the way that gets you going. And so a lot of people have this false correlation that charismatic people are all over the place. They're flimsy. They're just trying to act quickly. They just happen to not be slow to speak. So again, a reminder here, what was the quote? The ancients spoke little, for they were too ashamed when their actions fell short of their words. Now, the ancients here aren't just old fuddy-duddies, and they're not. Every ancient is to be revered. He talks about the ancients, especially from the context of Chinese mythology, Chinese kind of belief systems as they grew up. The ancients were to be revered. They were acknowledged to not always be right, but they were acknowledged to be revered, to be studied, to be taken very seriously when we assess how they act. So he says, the ancients spoke little. They were too ashamed when their actions fell short of words. Now, what does he not say? You don't speak quickly. You don't speak a lot. Why? Because you're going to fall short and then you're going to be ashamed. That's not what he says. He says, consider this. The ancients spoke little. They were too ashamed when their actions fell short of words. And there's wisdom there. But then he also says this. So the noble-minded in general aspire to speak slowly, but to act quickly. So what I'd like, the reason I bring this up is I'm really bothered that there's this idea that as people get older, they get further and further away from believing they can achieve big things. That's actually kind of maturity. If you're 90 and thinking, I'm going to start a new career, good on you. You should, especially if it inspires you and runs you. But the challenge is that you actually have a 20-year career and something from there forward are kind of iffy at the moment. Technology might change. It makes sense that as you get older, you start to rev back on how many goals and how big your goals are. That makes sense. It starts to make sense that you become more reserved. It starts to make sense that you start to select your words more. That's wisdom. That's maturity. So I'm not knocking that. But I want to tear apart the false correlation that in doing so, you also need to be slow to make decisions and slow to act. This world is racing by. The world is both, your life is both slow and fast. Life is long, but it's also very short. And too many people I have noticed are acting slowly. Well, we're going to take our time and we're going to figure this out over the next 3 months. Why don't we figure this out today? We're gonna figure out how to delegate our business, and it's gonna take us another 3 weeks of just deciding. I got to give Marissa props. We hit an impasse yesterday in discussing how we were going to outsource and delegate one aspect of our business, and we were at an impasse. And usually, an impasse for us means we're either not going to make a decision, we're delaying decisiveness, or we're just not going to do it. And I got to give Marissa credit yesterday. She actually came in and said, let's just move forward. And she said it, and I didn't understand her for like 5 minutes. I thought she was saying, let's just move off of this topic. And she had to come back and say, no, I'm not angry. I'm saying, let's move forward. This shocked me because typically when we have an impasse like this, there's just no decision making and no decisiveness. And decisiveness isn't just making the decision. Decisiveness is committing to acting quickly and now because we decided this was the right thing to do. And if once you have acknowledged that there is something that is the right thing to do, you need to act quickly. You've already done your thinking. You've already been slow to speak. Do the other side of Confucius and be quick to act. And he goes on to say this. In the presence of sages, you can see how to perfect your thoughts. Okay, he's setting the tone. And nearly every saying of Confucius has two sides, so I've just given you the first side. And in this side, he's setting the tone. And the tone is when you're around smart people, that's the opportunity for you to inspect your thinking, for you to inspect your thoughts, for you to actually start to craft how you'll think and where you're perfect and imperfect in your thinking. Basically, you can see how to perfect your thoughts. This is where you get reserved, where you speak little, where you ponder so that you're not ashamed. But then he goes on to say this. In the presence of fools and peasants, you must awaken yourself. I bounced this off of what one of the Greeks called philosopher kings. And the way Confucius talks about fools and peasants. Unfortunately, China did have and still kind of does, has a very strong caste system of basically city and governmental workers and veneered or revered workers and peasants and farmers. And that's not necessarily good. But quite often there was a correlation to ignorance. And when he says fools and peasants, there's kind of this correlation to ignorance, those who are acting ignorant. So don't hear peasants in terms of farmers and go, this guy. He was a little classist, if you will. But he paints on one side. When you're around wise people, take time to be introspective. But when you are out in the masses and you have made your decision or you're going through the mundane, bring the energy. Have fun in the mundane. Take the energy you had around your goals and transmit that to the mundane. Why? So you can be decisive, so you can get through that material. If you're mundane, you're dragging it out. If you are revving down in these areas, you're going, no, I'm just being thoughtful, just being careful. There are moments for that, and there are moments to go, I know what I need to do. And I'm going to own that. Too often, I see people, I had to say this to someone yesterday. You are no longer allowed to say the phrase, I am confused. It's a useless phrase. It's a relegation of responsibility. You are allowed to express your confusion by saying, I'm trying to understand X. I am trying to go here, but there's this conflict I'm having. You are not allowed to say, I am confused. Because you are declaring to the universe and all the world that there's a state of being in you called confusion. And you go through life like you're going through a spider web of thought where you actually are a person called confusion. I am confused. I am strong. I am confused is the opposite of that. We know when someone says something positive, it's a character trait they're trying to exude. So why don't we recognize this when we hear things like, I am confused. And there's a whole litany of them. I am not so sure about that goal. Or you could say, I like that goal. I am trying to figure out how to overcome that, how to achieve that. But there's just this general reservation that I want to call out and encourage in everyone. Find your energy center. And bring the energy. You might not be as outspoken or loud or obnoxious as I am. I encourage you to revisit goals that make you passionate. Let them remind you what it's like to be filled with passion. And then lift that energy and bring it over to the mundane things that you just have to get through responsibly. Why? Because the sooner you can bring good energy to that and good clarity and good focus and like pace, pick up the pace, get it done. Why? Because if we get our work done early, we could go do more about hanging out with that goal. But let's quit dragging things out. One last time from the man himself, and then I'll let you guys go for the day. Number one, he said, the ancients spoke little, and that's wisdom. They were too ashamed when their actions fell short of their words. I get it. But then he goes on to say, so this is what the noble-minded aspire to. Be slow to speak, but quick to act. And in the presence of sages, take your time, be reserved, because you can take the time to figure out how to perfect your thoughts when you're around the wise. But when you're out in the world and you're among the masses and you're facing the work of the day, you must awaken yourself. I encourage you to awaken yourself. No one's coming. No one's coming to awaken you. No one, I can talk on this microphone all day long, and maybe two of you, maybe three of you, maybe one of you, maybe two of you will see this today. It's an off day, it's Thursday. And you might even get hype if you swing by and actually see this show and get pumped. But when you start facing the world, are you digging deep and bringing the same energy you would to the funnest things you do, to the most glorious things you do? Can you bring that same energy to the mundane? I encourage you to try. I encourage you to try because I know for a fact you'll get the mundane, you'll get through the mundane quicker, easier, with less stress, and you'll be able to turn your attention back to your goals sooner. Have a great day, you guys. I'm going to go have coffee with my lovely wife. If you need any help at all, visit us, State of the Spark.